Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Like you're standing in a crowded room, surrounded by people who share your DNA, yet you might as well be a ghost? That's exactly how I felt at my brother's engagement party last Saturday evening. What started as what should have been a joyous celebration in our family's backyard turned into one of the most painful yet transformative nights of my life. And it all changed when someone I barely knew, my future sister-in-law, did something that would shift our family dynamic forever. But before we begin, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us where you're listening from. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across our parents' perfectly manicured backyard in suburban Chicago. White string lights hung between the oak trees, creating a magical canopy over the gathering of about 50 friends and family members. Mom had outdone herself with the decorations, elegant white and gold balloons, fresh flowers from her garden, and a champagne fountain that sparkled in the golden hour light. I stood near the edge of the patio, nursing my second glass of wine and watching my parents beam with pride as they introduced my older brother Marcus to what felt like every single guest for the 10th time that evening. "This is our son Marcus," Dad would say, his chest puffed out with pride, "the one who just made partner at Henderson and Associates. Can you believe it? 32 years old and already a partner at one of Chicago's most prestigious law firms." Mom would chime in, her voice practically singing with joy, "And this beautiful young woman is Sarah, his fiancée. She's a pediatric nurse at Northwestern Memorial. They're perfect together, aren't they?" I watched this scene play out over and over, each repetition feeling like a small knife twisting in my chest. Not once, not a single time, did they mention that they had another child. Their daughter. Me. Emma, the 29-year-old high school English teacher who had been standing right there beside them for the first hour of the party before I gave up and retreated to my corner. "Emma!" My college friend Jessica appeared at my elbow, looking concerned. "You look like you're about to murder someone with your eyes. What's going on?" I forced a smile and took another sip of wine. "Just enjoying the party. You know how family gatherings can be." Jessica raised an eyebrow. She'd known me since freshman year at Northwestern, and she could read me like one of the books I taught my students. "This is about your parents, isn't it? They're doing that thing again." "What thing?" I asked, though we both knew exactly what thing she meant. "The thing where they act like Marcus hung the moon and you're just there." She touched my arm gently. You know they love you, right? They're just proud of their successful son and his perfect fiancée," I finished for her. "I know. I get it. Marcus is the golden child. He always has been." As if summoned by our conversation, Marcus appeared beside us, his arm wrapped around Sarah's waist. Even I had to admit they looked like they'd stepped out of a catalog, him in his perfectly tailored navy blazer and khakis, her in a flowing white sundress that complemented her auburn hair and green eyes. There you are," Marcus said, pulling me into a hug. "I've been looking for you. Sarah, this is my little sister Emma, the one I was telling you about." Sarah smiled warmly, extending her hand. "It's so nice to finally meet you, Emma. Marcus talks about you all the time." I shook her hand, surprised by the genuine warmth in her grip and her eyes. "Nice to meet you too. Congratulations on your engagement." "Thank you," she said, then glanced around the party. "This is all so beautiful. Your parents really went all out." "Yeah, they love a good party," I said, trying to keep the bitterness out of my voice. Marcus squeezed my shoulder. "Dad was just telling the Johnsons about how you got that Teacher of the Year nomination. He's really proud of you, Em." I looked across the yard to where Dad was now gesturing animatedly while talking to Marcus's law school friends, probably telling them about the big case Marcus had just won. "Sure he is. Emma." Marcus's voice carried a warning tone I recognized from our childhood. "I'm fine," I said quickly. "This is your night. I'm happy for you both, really." Sarah was watching me with those observant green eyes, and I had the uncomfortable feeling that she was seeing more than I wanted her to. Before I could excuse myself, Mom's voice rang out across the yard. Everyone! Everyone, please gather around. We're going to do the toast now. The crowd moved toward the center of the yard where Mom and Dad stood with champagne glasses raised. I hung back, but Jessica grabbed my hand and pulled me forward. Come on, she whispered. Your family. You belong up there. But as we approached the inner circle, I realized that the family section was clearly defined, and I wasn't part of it. Mom and Dad stood in the center, flanked by Marcus and Sarah. Marcus's two groomsmen-to-be stood to one side, and Sarah's parents, who had driven in from Milwaukee, stood on the other. There was no space for me in that tight circle, no expectant glances in my direction. Dad cleared his throat and began his speech. Patricia and I couldn't be prouder of our son Marcus. From the time he was little, we knew he was destined for great things. Valedictorian in high school, summa cum laude at Northwestern, law review at Chicago, and now the youngest partner in his firm's history. The crowd murmured appreciatively. I felt my cheeks burn. And Sarah, Dad continued, turning to beam at her, you're not just gaining a husband, you're gaining a family. We couldn't have handpicked a better daughter-in-law. You two are going to have such a beautiful life together. Mom took over, her voice thick with emotion. Marcus, you've always made us so proud. And Sarah, welcome to the family, sweetheart. We love you already. They all clinked glasses, and the crowd erupted in applause. I clapped along mechanically, feeling like I was watching the scene from outside my own body. Around me, people were smiling and laughing, calling out congratulations. But all I could hear was the echo of my father's words, our son Marcus. Not our children or Marcus and Emma. Just Marcus. That was beautiful, I heard someone say behind me. They raised such a wonderful son, another voice agreed. Son. Singular. As if I didn't exist. I turned to make my escape, but found myself face to face with my Aunt Linda, Mom's sister, who had flown in from Phoenix for the party. Emma, honey, she said, pulling me into a hug that smelled like her signature perfume and wine. How are you doing? I heard you got some big teaching award? Just a nomination, I said, grateful that at least someone had noticed. Oh, don't be modest. That's wonderful. I'm so proud of you. She glanced around the party. Although I have to say, your parents really outdid themselves for Marcus. Remember when you graduated from college? We went to that little restaurant downtown. What was it called? Olive Garden, I said quietly. Right. That was nice too, of course. Different, but nice. She patted my arm. Well, I better go congratulate the happy couple again. You know how these things are. As she walked away, I felt something inside me crack. The Olive Garden graduation dinner. I'd forgotten about that, or maybe I'd tried to forget. When Marcus graduated from law school, they'd thrown a party at the country club with 100 guests. When I graduated with my master's in education, we'd gone to Olive Garden. Just the four of us. Marcus had been in the middle of studying for the bar exam, so he'd spent most of the dinner on his phone. I needed air. I needed space. I needed to get away from this celebration of everything I wasn't. I was making my way toward the house when I heard Sarah's voice behind me. Emma, wait up! I turned to see her hurrying across the yard, her white dress flowing behind her like something out of a movie. Hey, she said, slightly out of breath. Are you okay? You looked like you were about to bolt. I forced another smile. Just needed to use the bathroom. And maybe get some water. The wine is stronger than I thought. She studied my face for a moment, and I could see her deciding whether to push or let it go. Okay, she said finally. But before you disappear completely, I wanted to talk to you about something. What about? Marcus mentioned that you're a teacher. I was hoping to pick your brain about something. My nephew is having some trouble in school, and I thought maybe you might have some advice. It was a simple request, but something about the way she said it, like she genuinely valued my opinion, like she thought I might actually have something worthwhile to contribute, made my throat tighten with unexpected emotion. Of course, I managed. I'd be happy to help. Great. Maybe we could grab coffee sometime this week? I know you're probably busy with the school year starting soon. I stared at her, trying to process this. She wanted to have coffee with me. She wanted my advice. She was treating me like a person worth knowing, not just Marcus's forgettable little sister. I'd like that, I said, and meant it. Sarah smiled. Perfect. I'll get your number from Marcus. She paused, then added, you know, he talks about you a lot. He's really proud of you. Before I could respond, she was pulled away by another group of guests wanting to congratulate her. I stood there for a moment, wondering if I'd imagined the whole conversation. But no, Sarah had sought me out. She'd made an effort to connect with me when my own parents couldn't be bothered to acknowledge my existence. I looked back across the yard at the celebration continuing without me and made a decision. I would stay. I would smile. I would play the part of the happy sister. But I would also remember this feeling, this moment of clarity about where I stood in my family's hierarchy. And maybe, just maybe, I would do something about it. The party was in full swing as evening settled over the backyard. The string lights had been turned on, casting everything in a warm, golden glow that made the whole scene look like something from a Pinterest board. I'd found a spot at one of the high-top tables near the garden, far enough from the main action to observe without being expected to participate. From my vantage point, I watched my parents work the crowd like seasoned politicians. Dad had his arm around Marcus's shoulders, introducing him to his golf buddies from the country club. Mom was showing off Sarah to her book club friends, gushing about how lucky they were to have such a wonderful daughter-in-law. She's a pediatric nurse, Mom was saying to Mrs. Chen from down the street. Can you imagine? She spends her days taking care of sick children. An angel, really. I took another sip of wine and tried to focus on the positive. This was a celebration. My brother was happy. I should be happy for him. But every time I tried to summon genuine joy, I kept hearing Dad's toast echoing in my head, our son Marcus. Not children. Son. Emma? I looked up to find Sarah's mom, Mrs. Peterson, approaching my table. She was a petite woman with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Hi, Mrs. Peterson. How are you enjoying the party? Oh, please, call me Linda. And it's lovely, really. Your parents have done such a beautiful job. She gestured to the empty chair across from me. Mind if I sit? These heels are killing me. Of course. Linda settled into the chair with a sigh of relief. Much better. I swear, I don't know how Sarah manages to wear heels all day at the hospital. Must be all that youth. I smiled. I'm strictly a flats girl myself. Comfort over fashion. Smart woman. Linda looked around the party, then back at me. You know, Sarah's told me so much about you. She's really excited to have a sister-in-law who's a teacher. She was always drawn to education herself, before she decided on nursing. I felt a little flutter of surprise. She's mentioned me? Oh, constantly. She's been pestering Marcus for weeks to arrange a meeting. She's particularly interested in your work with struggling readers. Her nephew, my grandson, is having some difficulties, and she's been researching different approaches to help him. This was news to me. Marcus had never mentioned that Sarah was interested in my work, let alone that she'd been asking about me. I glanced across the yard to where Sarah was laughing with a group of her college friends, her face animated and bright. I had no idea, I said honestly. Linda followed my gaze. Sarah's like that. She collects people, you know? She sees something special in everyone she meets. It's one of the things that makes her such a good nurse, I think. Before I could respond, a commotion near the dessert table caught our attention. Marcus was standing with a group of his law school buddies, gesturing with his champagne glass as he told what was obviously a very entertaining story. Their laughter carried across the yard. "That's my future son-in-law," Linda said with obvious affection. "Such a charming young man. He and Sarah are going to have beautiful children." "Yeah," I said, watching as Mom and Dad materialized beside Marcus's group, eager to bask in the reflected glory of his storytelling. He's always been the star of the family. Something in my tone must have given me away, because Linda turned to study my face. "And what about you, Emma? What's your story?" I shrugged. "Not much of one, I'm afraid. I teach high school English. I have a small apartment in Lincoln Park. I've got a cat named Mr. Darcy who's probably wondering where his dinner is right about now." "Do you love it? Teaching?" The question caught me off guard. When was the last time someone had asked me that? Really asked, like they cared about the answer? "I do," I said, and felt some of the tension in my shoulders ease. I love those moments when a student finally gets it, you know? When they've been struggling with a concept or a book, and then suddenly everything clicks. Their whole face lights up. Linda smiled. "That's how Sarah talks about her patients. She says there's nothing better than seeing a sick child smile. She sounds like a wonderful person." She is. And she's lucky to be gaining such a thoughtful sister-in-law. I looked at Linda sharply, but her expression was sincere. "I'm not sure my parents would agree with that assessment." "Oh, honey." Linda's voice was gentle. "Parents can be complicated, can't they? They love us all, but they don't always know how to show it equally." Before I could respond, the sound of a spoon tapping against glass drew everyone's attention. Marcus was standing on a chair near the dessert table, Sarah beside him, both of them glowing with happiness. "Hey, everyone!" Marcus called out. "Sarah and I wanted to thank you all for being here tonight. This has been absolutely perfect." The crowd gathered around them, and I found myself once again on the periphery, watching from my table. Linda had moved closer to get a better view, leaving me alone with my thoughts and my wine. "We're so grateful to have such amazing family and friends," Sarah was saying. "This support means everything to us as we start this new chapter of our lives." "And we have some exciting news to share," Marcus added, grinning. "We've set a date. June 15th, next year. Save the date, everyone." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. I clapped along mechanically, doing the math in my head. June 15th. That was less than a year away. They'd be planning a wedding, and I'd be, what? The sister who helped address invitations? The one who got stuck at the kids' table because she didn't have a plus one? "Emma!" Sarah's voice cut through my spiral of self-pity. She was looking directly at me from across the crowd. "I hope you'll consider being one of my bridesmaids." The entire party turned to look at me. I felt heat rise in my cheeks as dozens of eyes focused on me, including my parents. For a moment, I was frozen, unsure how to respond to this very public invitation. That would be wonderful," I managed, my voice barely carrying across the yard. "Great." Sarah beamed. "We'll talk details later, but I'm so excited." As the crowd's attention shifted back to the happy couple, I caught my mother's eye. She looked surprised. Like the idea of me being in the wedding party had never occurred to her. Like she'd forgotten I existed until Sarah mentioned me. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and wedding talk. I found myself drawn into conversations about venues and dresses and flowers, but always as an afterthought, someone to be informed rather than consulted. My parents continued their pattern of introducing Marcus and Sarah to anyone who would listen, while I remained invisible. It was nearly 10 o'clock when the party finally began to wind down. Guests were saying their goodbyes, and the catering staff was starting to clean up. I was helping stack plates when I overheard a conversation between my parents and the Johnsons, family friends from the neighborhood. "You must be so proud," Mrs. Johnson was saying. "What a successful young man. And that lovely girl he's marrying." "We couldn't be happier," Mom replied. "Marcus has exceeded every expectation we had for him. Partner at 32, and now this beautiful engagement. We're truly blessed." "And what about your other child?" Mr. Johnson asked. "Don't you have a daughter?" There was a pause. A small, but noticeable pause. "Oh, yes," Dad said. "Emma. She teaches high school." The way he said it, like teaching was some kind of consolation prize, like I was some kind of consolation prize, made something inside me snap. I set down the plates I'd been holding and walked over to where they were standing. "Excuse me," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I couldn't help but overhear." "Yes, I teach high school. I teach English to teenagers who think Shakespeare is dead and irrelevant, and I help them discover that he's actually alive and speaking directly to their hearts. I was nominated for Teacher of the Year by my colleagues because they see the difference I make in kids' lives every single day. I may not make partner at a law firm, but I make a difference in ways that matter." The Johnsons looked uncomfortable. My parents looked shocked. "Emma," Mom said quietly, "what's gotten into you?" "Nothing's gotten into me," I said. "I'm just tired of being invisible in my own family." I turned and walked into the house, my heart pounding. I needed to get out of there before I said something I'd really regret. I grabbed my purse from the kitchen counter and headed for the front door. "Emma, wait." I turned to find Sarah hurrying after me, her white dress now wrinkled from the long evening. "Where are you going?" she asked. "Home. I think I've had enough family togetherness for one night." Sarah studied my face in the dim light of the front porch. "They hurt your feelings." It wasn't a question. "It's nothing new," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "I'm used to it." "That doesn't make it okay." I looked at her, this woman who had known me for all of 3 hours but seemed to see me more clearly than my own parents did. "Why did you ask me to be a bridesmaid?" I asked suddenly. "You barely know me." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "Because Marcus loves you. Because when he talks about you, his whole face lights up. Because you're going to be my sister, and I want us to be friends." She paused. "And because I spent most of tonight watching you stand on the sidelines at your own brother's engagement party, and that broke my heart." I felt tears prick my eyes. "I should go." "Emma." Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. "Don't let them make you feel like you don't matter. You do matter. And tomorrow, when you've had some sleep and some perspective, I hope you'll remember that." I nodded, not trusting my voice, and walked to my car. As I drove away, I could see the party still going on in the backyard, the string lights twinkling like stars. But for the first time all evening, I didn't feel like I was missing out. I felt like I was finally heading somewhere I belonged. The next morning, I woke up with a wine headache and a crushing sense of embarrassment. Had I really confronted my parents in front of the Johnsons? Had I really stormed out of my brother's engagement party? I groaned and pulled a pillow over my head, wishing I could disappear. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Marcus, "Call me when you get this. We need to talk." Great. Now I was going to get the Big Brother lecture about family loyalty and making scenes. I set the phone aside and stumbled to the kitchen to make coffee. Mr. Darcy wound around my legs, purring and demanding breakfast. "At least you still love me," I muttered, opening a can of his favorite salmon pâté. As I waited for the coffee to brew, I replayed the evening in my mind. Sarah's kindness. My parents' casual dismissal. The look on their faces when I finally spoke up. The way Sarah had followed me to the door, had seen my hurt and acknowledged it. My phone rang. Marcus. Hi, I said, not bothering to hide the exhaustion in my voice. What the hell happened last night? I assume Mom and Dad gave you their version. They said you were drinking and got upset about something. They're worried about you. I laughed bitterly. They're worried about me? That's rich. Emma, come on. I know you and Mom and Dad have your issues, but last night was supposed to be about Sarah and me. And it was, I said, settling onto my couch with my coffee. Trust me, it was all about you and Sarah. That was kind of the problem. There was a pause. What do you mean? Marcus, do you have any idea how many times our parents introduced you to people last night? I don't know. A lot, I guess. It was my engagement party. Do you know how many times they mentioned they have a daughter? Another pause, longer this time. 0, I said. The answer is 0. I stood there for 2 hours watching them beam with pride about their son the lawyer and his perfect fiancée. When people asked about their other child, there was this pause, like they had to remember I existed. That's not. It is, Marcus. It is exactly like that. And you know what? I'm tired of pretending it doesn't hurt. I heard him sigh. Look, I know Mom and Dad can be focused. But they love you. Do they? Because it doesn't feel like it. It feels like they have one child they're proud of and one child they tolerate. That's not fair. Isn't it? When you graduated from law school, they threw you a party at the country club. When I got my master's degree, we went to Olive Garden. When you made partner, Dad called everyone he knew to brag. When I got nominated for Teacher of the Year, they forgot to mention it to anyone. The silence stretched between us. Finally, Marcus spoke. I didn't know you felt this way. Of course you didn't. Why would you? You're the golden child. You've never had to fight for their attention or their pride. It's just always been there. I'm not angry at you, I said quickly. This isn't your fault. You didn't ask to be the favorite. But I'm tired of being invisible. Another long pause. What do you want me to do? Nothing. This is between me and them. I needed you to understand. I do understand. And I'm sorry. I should have noticed. Yeah, well. You had other things on your mind. That's not an excuse. His voice was quiet. You're my sister. I should have noticed. After we hung up, I felt drained but oddly relieved. At least Marcus knew now. At least someone in my family understood how I felt. I was settling in for a day of grading papers and feeling sorry for myself when my phone buzzed again. This time it was an unknown number. Hi Emma, this is Sarah. I got your number from Marcus. I hope you don't mind. I definitely didn't mind. Hi, Sarah. How are you feeling today? I hope you're not too hungover. A little tired, but nothing a good cup of coffee can't fix. I was wondering if you might want to grab that coffee we talked about. I know it's last minute, but I'm free this afternoon if you are. I looked around my apartment, at the stack of papers I needed to grade, at Mr. Darcy sprawled across my couch in a patch of sunlight. I'd like that. Where did you have in mind? There's this little place called Brew and Bean on Lincoln Avenue. Do you know it? I did know it. It was a cozy little coffee shop about 10 minutes from my apartment, the kind of place where you could sit for hours without feeling rushed. Perfect. What time? How about 2 o'clock? I'll see you there. I spent the next few hours trying to focus on grading, but my mind kept wandering to the conversation ahead. What did Sarah want to talk about? Was she going to give me a lecture about family harmony? Was she going to ask me to apologize to my parents? At 1:45, I walked into Brew and Bean to find Sarah already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee. She'd changed from her engagement party glamour into jeans and a simple blue sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked younger, more approachable. "I hope you don't mind," she said as I sat down. "I took the liberty of ordering for you. Vanilla latte, right? Marcus mentioned it was your favorite." "It is. Thank you." I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, grateful for something to do with my nervous energy. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping our coffee and watching the afternoon crowd drift in and out of the shop. "How are you feeling about last night?" Sarah asked finally. I considered giving her a polite non-answer, but something about her direct gaze made me want to be honest. Embarrassed, mostly. I'm not usually one for public confrontations. "But you felt like you had to say something." "I guess I did." Sarah nodded. "I'm glad you did." I looked at her in surprise. "Really?" "Emma, I spent most of last night watching your parents introduce Marcus and me to every person at that party. Not once did they mention that Marcus has a sister who teaches high school, who is nominated for Teacher of the Year, who clearly adores her brother even when he's being obtuse." "He's not obtuse," I said automatically. "He's a man," Sarah said with a smile. "Sometimes that's the same thing." Despite everything, I laughed. "You might have a point there." "I called him this morning, actually. After he told me about your conversation." "Oh." I may have given him a piece of my mind about family dynamics and the importance of making sure everyone feels valued. I stared at her. "You did?" "I did. And I may have also had a conversation with your parents." My heart sank. "Sarah, you didn't have to." "Yes, I did." Her voice was firm but kind. "Emma, I'm going to be part of this family now. And I won't be part of a family that makes one of its members feel invisible." "What did you say to them?" I told them that I spent last night watching their daughter stand on the sidelines at her own brother's engagement party, and that it broke my heart. I told them that you're going to be my sister-in-law, and I want us to have a relationship, but that's pretty hard to do when they act like you don't exist. I felt tears prick my eyes. "You barely know me." "Why would you do that?" "Because it was the right thing to do. And because..." She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. "Because I know what it's like to feel invisible in your own family." "Really?" Sarah nodded. "I have 2 older brothers. Both doctors. My parents are doctors. I was supposed to be a doctor too. When I chose nursing instead, it was like I'd committed some kind of family treason. For years, I was the daughter who'd disappointed them, who hadn't lived up to her potential. But you're a pediatric nurse. You help sick children." That's what I told them. Repeatedly. For about 5 years. She smiled wryly. "They came around eventually, but it took time. And it took me learning to speak up for myself." "Is that what you think I should do?" "I think you should do whatever feels right for you. But I also think you should know that you have an ally now. Someone who sees you and values you and thinks you're pretty amazing." I felt a warmth spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the coffee. "Thank you. That means more than you know." "Good. Because I have a favor to ask." "What kind of favor?" "I want you to help me plan the wedding." I blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "I want you to help me plan the wedding. I know I asked you to be a bridesmaid last night, but I want more than that. I want you to be my maid of honor." I stared at her. "Sarah, Before you say no, hear me out. I don't have a sister. My best friend from college lives in Seattle and has 2 kids under 3. My other close friends are scattered across the country. But you're here, and you're going to be my sister, and I want us to be friends. Real friends. But we just met. So? Sometimes the best friendships start with a leap of faith. She leaned forward. Emma, I like you. I like your honesty, your passion for your work, your loyalty to your family even when they don't deserve it. I want you in my corner, and I want to be in yours. I felt tears threatening again. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Say you'll help me plan a wedding that celebrates not just Marcus and me, but the family we're all creating together. Say you'll help me make sure everyone feels included and valued. I looked at this woman who had known me for less than 24 hours but had already stood up for me more than my own parents had in years. Who saw something in me worth fighting for? Yes, I said. I'd be honored. Sarah's face lit up with a smile that could have powered the entire coffee shop. Perfect. This is going to be so much fun. As we spent the next 2 hours talking about wedding plans, family dynamics, and everything in between, I realized something had shifted. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the forgotten daughter, the invisible sister. I felt like someone who mattered. Someone who belonged. And it was all because a woman I'd just met had decided I was worth fighting for. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in my classroom after school, grading essays about family dynamics. The irony wasn't lost on me when my phone buzzed with a call from Mom. Hi, Mom. Emma, honey, do you have a minute to talk? I set down my red pen and leaned back in my chair. Sure. What's up? Well, I wanted to talk to you about the engagement party. About what happened. Here it comes, I thought. The lecture about family loyalty and not making scenes. I owe you an apology, Mom said. I nearly dropped the phone. I'm sorry, what? I said I owe you an apology. Sarah helped me understand some things, and I realize I haven't been the mother you deserved. I was quiet for a long moment, processing this unexpected turn. Mom. No, let me finish. I've been thinking about this for weeks now, and I need to say it. She took a breath. Your father and I, we got so caught up in Marcus's achievements that we forgot to celebrate yours. We forgot to see you. You didn't forget, I said quietly. You just didn't think mine were worth celebrating. That's not true. Her voice was firm. Emma, do you know what I tell people when they ask about my children? You tell them about Marcus. The lawyer. The partner. The success story. I tell them about both of my children. I tell them about my son the lawyer and my daughter the teacher. But I realize now that I haven't been telling you that. I haven't been telling you how proud I am. I felt tears prick my eyes. Are you? Proud of me? Oh, sweetheart. Of course I am. I'm proud that you chose a career that matters, that makes a difference. I'm proud that you were nominated for Teacher of the Year. I'm proud that you care so much about your students. I'm proud of who you've become. Then why? Because I'm an idiot, Mom said bluntly. Because I got so used to bragging about Marcus's tangible successes, the money, the prestige, the recognition, that I forgot how to talk about the kind of success that can't be measured in dollars or titles. The kind of success you have. I wiped away a tear that had escaped down my cheek. Mom, I talked to your principal, Emma. You what? I called Riverside High and asked to speak with Mrs. Martinez. I told her I was your mother and that I wanted to understand more about this Teacher of the Year nomination. I was stunned. My mother had never shown interest in my work before, beyond polite inquiries about how school was going. What did she say? She said that you're one of the most dedicated teachers she's ever worked with. That your students love you because you see them, really see them, and you help them find their voices. She said that last year, you stayed after school every day for 3 months to help a student who was struggling with reading, and by the end of the year, he was reading at grade level. That's my job, I said quietly. No, Emma. That's your calling. There's a difference. Mom's voice was thick with emotion. She told me about the poetry club you started, about the scholarship fund you organized for students who can't afford college application fees. She said you're the teacher kids come to when they're struggling at home, when they need someone to believe in them. I was crying now, really crying. Mom. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I'm sorry I made you feel invisible. I'm sorry I didn't see what an amazing woman you've become. I'm sorry it took Sarah pointing it out for me to realize what I was doing to you. It's okay, I managed. No, it's not okay. But I want to make it right. If you'll let me. We talked for another hour. She told me about her conversation with Sarah, about how my future sister-in-law had very diplomatically but firmly explained that families are supposed to lift each other up, not compete for attention. She told me about her own childhood, about being the middle child who never felt quite good enough, about how she'd sworn she'd never make her own children feel that way. But I did anyway, she said. Without meaning to, I made you feel exactly how I felt as a child. I'm so sorry, Emma. When we finally hung up, I sat in my empty classroom for a long time, processing everything that had happened. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Coffee tomorrow? I want to hear about wedding cake flavors and family conversations. I smiled and typed back, yes to both. Thank you for everything. The next few months passed in a whirlwind of wedding planning and family healing. True to her word, Mom began making an effort to include me, to celebrate my achievements, to treat me like an equal member of the family rather than Marcus's little sister. It wasn't perfect, old habits die hard, but it was progress. Dad took longer to come around, but even he began to change. When his golf buddies asked about his kids, he started mentioning both of us. When I won the Teacher of the Year award in November, yes, I actually won, he called everyone he knew to brag about it, just like he'd done when Marcus made partner. Sarah and I became genuine friends. We spent hours together planning her wedding, but more than that, she became someone I could talk to, someone who understood what it was like to fight for your place in your family. She was funny and kind and fiercely loyal, and I began to understand why Marcus had fallen so hard for her. You know what I love about wedding planning? Sarah said one Saturday afternoon as we sat in a bridal shop, surrounded by tulle and lace samples. The stress? The expense? The family drama? I asked, making her laugh. The way it brings people together. The way it makes you think about what family really means. She held up 2 different shades of blue ribbon. What do you think? Navy or royal? Navy. It'll photograph better. I watched her make a note in her wedding binder. Sarah, can I ask you something? Anything. Why did you really ask me to be your maid of honor? I mean, I know what you said about wanting us to be friends, but there had to be more to it than that. Sarah set down her pen and looked at me thoughtfully. Do you remember what you said to the Johnsons that night? About teaching Shakespeare to teenagers? I cringed. You mean when I had my dramatic breakdown? You said that you help kids discover that Shakespeare is alive and speaking directly to their hearts. That you make a difference in ways that matter. She leaned forward. Emma, in that moment, I saw exactly who you are. You're someone who sees people, who fights for them, who believes in them even when they don't believe in themselves. That's exactly the kind of person I want standing beside me on my wedding day. I love my job, I said, but sometimes I wonder if it's enough. If I'm enough. You're more than enough. You're extraordinary. And I need you to believe that. As spring turned into summer, our family continued to evolve. Marcus and I grew closer than we'd been since we were kids. He started calling me regularly, asking for advice about everything from wedding planning to work stress. He even came to one of my poetry club meetings, where my students grilled him about being a lawyer, and he charmed them completely. "I'm proud of you, Em," he told me afterward as we walked to our cars. "I know I don't say it enough, but I am. What you do matters. Those kids are lucky to have you." "Thanks, Marcus. That means a lot." Sarah was right, you know. About everything. I was so caught up in my own life that I stopped seeing yours. I'm sorry for that. We're good, I assured him. We're family. We figure it out. 2 weeks before the wedding, I was putting together the final touches on Sarah's bridal shower when she pulled me aside. "I have something for you," she said, handing me a small wrapped box. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a charm that read "Sister." "Sarah, it's beautiful, but you're my sister now," she said simply. "Not just because I'm marrying Marcus, but because you chose to be. Because we chose each other. I wanted you to have something to remind you of that." I hugged her tight, this woman who had seen me when I felt invisible, who had fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself, who had helped my family become whole again. The wedding day dawned clear and bright, with just enough breeze to keep the June heat from being oppressive. The ceremony was being held at the Chicago Botanic Garden, surrounded by roses and peonies in full bloom. As I stood at the altar in my dusty blue bridesmaid dress, watching Sarah walk down the aisle toward Marcus, I felt a contentment I hadn't experienced in years. My parents sat in the front row, beaming with pride, and when Mom caught my eye, she smiled and mouthed, "I love you." During the reception, Dad stood up to give his toast. I braced myself, wondering if he'd fall back into old patterns. "Patricia and I couldn't be happier to welcome Sarah into our family," he began. "She's brought so much joy into Marcus's life, and into all our lives." He paused and looked directly at me. "Sarah, you're not just gaining a husband today. You're gaining a sister who will love you fiercely and support you unconditionally. Emma, I know Sarah couldn't have asked for a better maid of honor or a better friend." I felt tears prick my eyes as the room erupted in applause. Across the room, Sarah caught my eye and smiled, raising her champagne glass in a small toast meant just for me. Later, as the evening wound down and the last guests were saying their goodbyes, Sarah found me helping the caterers clear tables. "Hey, stop that," she said, taking a stack of plates out of my hands. "You're not supposed to be working. You're supposed to be celebrating." "I am celebrating," I said. "This is how I celebrate. By helping." Sarah laughed. "I should have known. Come on, let's go sit down for 5 minutes. My feet are killing me in these heels." We found a quiet spot at the edge of the garden, where we could see the Chicago skyline twinkling in the distance. Sarah kicked off her heels and sighed in relief. "So," she said, "how does it feel to be part of a functional family?" "Weird," I admitted, making her laugh. "But good weird. Really good weird." "I'm glad. You deserve to feel valued, Emma. You deserve to feel seen." "Thank you," I said. "For everything. For standing up for me, for becoming my friend, for loving my idiot brother. Thank you for being the sister I never had and always wanted." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the last of the wedding guests mingle on the dance floor. Marcus appeared, looking handsome in his tuxedo despite having loosened his tie hours ago. "There you are," he said, settling onto the bench beside us. "I've been looking everywhere. They're about to cut the cake." "We'll be right there," Sarah said, but she made no move to get up. "Actually," Marcus said, "I wanted to talk to both of you first." Sarah and I looked at him expectantly. "I know this day was about Sarah and me, but I want you both to know that it was also about family. About what family really means." He looked at me. I'm sorry it took me so long to see what was right in front of me. You're an amazing person, an amazing sister, and I'm lucky to have you." Marcus, I started. Let me finish. Sarah, thank you for seeing what I was too blind to see. Thank you for fighting for my sister when I should have been fighting for her myself. Thank you for making our family better, stronger, more complete. That's what family does, Sarah said simply. We fight for each other. Yes, Marcus said, it is. As we walked back toward the reception, I thought about how much had changed since that night 3 months ago when I'd felt invisible at my brother's engagement party. I was still a high school English teacher. I still lived in a small apartment with my cat. I still graded papers on Sunday nights and worried about my students. But I was no longer invisible. I was no longer the forgotten daughter, the overlooked sister. I was Emma Peterson, teacher, friend, sister, daughter, and I was finally, fully seen. The wedding cake was perfect, by the way. 3 layers of vanilla and chocolate with buttercream roses, just like Sarah had dreamed. As we all gathered around to watch Marcus and Sarah take their first bite as husband and wife, I felt my mother slip her arm around my waist. I'm proud of you, sweetheart, she whispered in my ear. For who you are, for what you do, for the woman you've become. I know, Mom, I whispered back. I finally know. And as Sarah laughed at something Marcus whispered to her, as Dad fumbled with his camera trying to capture the perfect shot, as our extended family and friends celebrated around us, I realized that sometimes the best families aren't the ones we're born into, but the ones we choose to create together. Sometimes it takes an outsider, someone brave enough to speak up, kind enough to care, and strong enough to fight, to help us remember what we mean to each other. Sometimes it takes someone like Sarah to remind us that we all deserve to be seen, to be valued, to be loved exactly as we are. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, that person becomes family too. If you liked this story, leave your opinion in the comments and of course, leave a like and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Big hug and see you soon.